Good evening. I figured tonight we'd do a walking intro because I don't know how far I'm going to be walking, and there's only so much time you have on an evening. And tonight we are heading to Plan Detueda. Torde? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but it is a nature reserve in the French Alps, just above Mottaret at Meribel. And there is a frozen lake, there are beautiful mountains, and there is a river. So there's going to be plenty of options to get some pictures. Fingers crossed they turn out very well, but we'll soon find out. So yeah, there is one shot that instantly comes to mind, and it's this. Across this frozen basin where there once was a lake, and I'm sure in the summer it will come back, with that little house just off in the distance and then big mountains lit up by that sun. But it is a shot that I've captured before, and here's the example of the shot that I've captured. Beautiful, lovely colours in the sky. A bit surreal if you ask me, but still a beautiful image anyway. But I don't just want to capture that image, I want to see what I can find further along. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got plenty of time. I can always head back to that spot and capture that later. But fingers crossed I'll find something new, because it's always nice to find something new. Something I'd maybe like to try and incorporate is this river here, but finding the correct vantage point with a correct focal point is going to be difficult. Fingers crossed we can find something. Even that little hut up there looks pretty cool with Mont Valon just in the distance. But this peak over here, this is something that definitely excites me. And if I can find the correct foreground and I manage to keep a few wisps in the air, we're on to a winner. It's going to be a beautiful image. And I think I found the possibility of another location. Oh, is my microphone turned on? Yes it is. I've got this little mountain hut just over there, and that massive peak that's lit up by that setting sun. If I can find the correct position to put myself to get that mountain peak and that cabin and that mountain peak to work together, I think that might be something special as well. So that's 2 ideas so far, 3 ideas, one that I've already captured. But I think this area is going to be quite fruitful this winter season. What I'd like to do is come here when there's been fresh snow on all the trees in a very windless condition. I think that would make quite some beautiful images. Quite more simplistic, using trees and rocks and stuff like that. But it is so beautiful here. Just look at this panoramic view. Check this out. And I didn't even know that this was here. Now this is the one that was signposted. It said it was 2 hours away, but it's taken me maybe half an hour. But I think this, with that mountain in the background, that is going to make quite a shot. But how can I tell the story? And that is what this shot is going to be all about. How to tell that story, getting that correct composition that gives you that idea of secluded, in the wilderness, lost maybe. All of these emotions I want, as well as, wow, check that out, that looks cool, I want to go there. But now it's just composing the shot. I already know that this is going to take a wide angle, because I want that perspective of the barn being big in front of that mountain. I don't want compression, the barn to be small. It's not about giving that mountain perspective, it's about telling the story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with my 24 to 70, because that's in the middle. And if I need to go wider,
I can go wider than 24, all the way down to 15. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a little walk around with my lens out, and I'm going to give my lens a little wipe first because it's absolutely filthy. But yeah, I'm going to have a little walk around with my camera, and as I'm walking around, what I'm going to try not to do is disturb the snow too much. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of skiers ski through this area, and I have walked right past the building. But I don't want to create anything else. But what I do want to create is a fantastic story. So fingers crossed it works out. And after a little walk around, this ain't wide enough. I'm going to go wider.
So like I said, I want this image to have a feeling, an emotion lost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these trees on both sides to create like a frame to help tell that story of peeking through the woods, seeing what's in nature, that kind of feeling. And then I've got the mountain peak just up on the left hand side, and I've got this little fern growing just opposite the cabin, and that's going to act like a leading line through into the cabin. The cabin is lined up perfectly to send your eye up into that mountain peak. I've got a feeling that this is going to be a nice shot. So, time to get set up and see if it's as good as I hope. Okay, so this is my composition. It is going to be a little bit wider on the top and the bottom, but I'm really liking these trees here. I'll tell you what, let's raise that exposure a little bit. So I really like these trees on this side, and this little bush. I feel like there's a beautiful leading line leading across there up to the mountain hut, and I'm loving the way the mountain hut from the roof leads up into that peak, and that wall guides your eye down, and it's just a really nice image, and I think it works really beautifully. To capture this image, I'm going to do a multiple exposure. So I'm going to do an exposure for these trees and the immediate foreground, probably quite similar to what it is now, and then I'll drop that exposure and really get that mountain at the top, beautiful coloured, just as it is right now, and bring that in to the scene. And I think it's going to look absolutely wonderful. Settings for this though, not too sure yet. I'm going to have a little play around and see what I can come up with. There we are, beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to capture the mountain in the background to start off with. So definitely f11. There's a lot in the immediate foreground, and a lot of distance between the focal point and the scene. I've got it so I've got a showing me how it's going to be exposed to start off with. ISO 64, as you can see, 2-second timer. That mountain is looking incredible there, right there. So that's 1/20th of a second, f11, ISO 64. Checking my histogram, nothing's blown out. A lot of detail in the shadows, but obviously, I mean, there's a lot of shadows, but obviously that's because I'm exposing for that mountain in the background at the moment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise that exposure for the midground, and I reckon about there is beautiful. And that's also going to be for the cabin here. I will probably lighten up the cabin in Photoshop, but that's going to be 1/10th of a second, f11, ISO 64. I'm going to fire that off. But as you can see, that mountain peak is really starting to get blown out, and look at the histogram, the way the highlights have travelled straight across there. Now I've got so much more blown out, almost blown out anyway. So now I'm going to raise the exposure one more time for them deep shadows. And I think 1/4 of a second? Yeah, 1/5 of a second. F11, ISO 64. Fire that off. And look at the histogram. The mountain's definitely blown out, the sky's blown out, but
if you look at the shadows on this side, you can see nothing's clipped now. So that means when I bring this into Photoshop and I blend all these different images together, I will end up with no shadows clipped and no highlights clipped either. The shadows are not so much of a problem, but them highlights, massive issue. Don't want to lose the highlights. So now, the final step is to zoom in and check how sharp these files are looking, because I want them to be pin sharp. That is looking pretty darn good. Now I'm going to check that mountain top, because obviously I focused to infinity, and look at the colour of that peak. Oh wow. And zoomed in that far, yeah, it looks a bit soft. It's always going to. But look at that. Beautiful. So I'm happy with this first composition, but I want to see if I can get another one. So I'm going to quickly pack up and I will see you down there for the next image. I'm definitely not going to have enough time to get down there and get the shot that I wanted. So what I am going to do is I'm going to do a similar shot to the one that I've already captured, but this time I'm going to get the long lens out and do a bit of compression and less warpy, but showing scale on that peak in the background. Yeah, and as you might have noticed, I'm in a tree well. The reason why, you will see once I've got my camera out. But I've got to get the camera out because this light is fading fast. So yeah, I never managed to do any talking, but what I did is I captured 3 images of the scene. One of the dark shadows just here with the information written underneath, and the trees are all nice and lit up. And then one for the mid-ground just here, specks are underneath. And then what I did for the mountain, you'll see a little revolving picture right now, but I took a series of images as that sun went further and further up that peak. The idea being that I get to choose which one looks best, and fingers crossed I do. The lens I decided to go for was not the telephoto lens. Yeah, that was too close, too sucked in, and not enough foreground to lead you in to that building, to give you that scale of the little hut next to the big mountain. So I didn't manage to get exactly the compression that I was hoping for, but I still used about 50 mil to get it. And it looked good. It looked good. I'm happy with that little scene. And this is the final one. You will see it on bigger at the end, but I wanted to talk you through why this became the final one. The peak, I don't know yet, but look at the way the snow leads you across into them trees, and you've got a direct line of white that leads you up into that cabin. I think that just looks really, really pretty. I've put the cabin directly underneath the peak, giving it that scale, the dwarfedness, telling that story of that secluded mountain peak off in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by snow in the wilds of winter. That's what I was going for anyway. It might not look like that, but my thought for this week is not only look for what is pretty and what will make a nice picture, but look for the story that you can tell through that picture. And hopefully tonight I have managed to tell 2 stories, both quite similar, of secluded, lonely and wild, but also with that pretty aspect. But that is all from me this week. I hope you've enjoyed the vlog, and if you have, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give me that most important thumbs up, and yeah, leave me a comment, tell me what you think. Other than that, peace out and have a lovely week. Don't work too hard.
If you talk all the time, you'll never hear what anybody else has to say. And therefore all you'll have to talk about is your own conversation. The same is true for people who think all the time. That means, when I use the word think, talking to yourself, subvocal conversation, the constant A chit-chat of symbols and images and talk and words inside your skull. Now, if you do that all the time, you'll find that you've nothing to think about except thinking. And just as you have to stop talking to hear what others have to say, you have to stop thinking to find out what life is about. And the moment you stop thinking, you become into immediate contact with the unspeakable world.